The next type of local scope property we're going to talk about is the equals. And you're going to see this is a two-way type of binding that we can do. So when it comes to our scenario with the wall, we can kind of punch a hole through it using the equals local scope property, but this is different than the at. The at was a one-way binding and it only allowed strings to be passed through. Well, with this one, we can pass a value through, but this is going to be a two-way. So if a value is passed in and the directive changes it, then the outside parent scope value would also be changed. And so this is very analogous to what you do with a controller, where you have a property, the UI changes the property, and that updates the property because it's a two-way binding. Now, here's what it looks like. So if we had Dave over on the left, and Dave passes the value into the directive over on the right and says, hey, I'm Dave, then over here on the right, we have Dave. Now, you're going to see that not only can we do this with strings and things, but we can also pass in objects. And that means if the object is changed inside, then the outside scope would also be changed because of this bidirectional or two-way binding. Now, in this example, if Dave's passed in, but the directive says, no, I'm going to change that to Jim, then it's like, no, you're Jim, and that value outside now changes to Jim. Now, here's what it looks like from a code standpoint. So you can see in our outer scope, what we'll call our parent scope, we have this person property on the scope, and it has a name property with a value of Dave. Well, if we want to pass the object in, then you saw with the at, not only is that a one-way binding, but it also passes it as a JSON type object. Well, if you want the actual object to be passed in, the memory location, then we can use the equals as we define our property on our scope of our directive. So the scope, again, is isolated. We've cut things off, but we're going to punch a little hole through, put a pipeline through the wall, name it customer, and this one actually allows objects or strings or really that type of scenario to be passed. So now to use it, it's a little bit different though. When we go and define this customer property on the directive to use it, note that we're not putting the squiggly brackets here. Now with the at, you normally will do that. If you don't, I showed you, it'll be a literal string will be passed in. Well, in this particular case, we just want the object to be bound into the person or the customer, I should say, and then the customer now will be able to get to the name or whatever it needs inside of the directive. So let's look at an example of the equals local scope property in action here.